Hello, everyone. It's hard to see who I'm presenting to, but I'm assuming people can hear me and are in the room. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge country. I'm here on Gunditjmara country and pay respect to elders past, present, and acknowledge that elders will be joining from other parts of country. I'm Erin Rose. I'm a Gunditjmara woman. I'm the Budj Bim World Heritage Executive Officer at Gunditjmara Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation. And today I'll talk a little bit about our World Heritage journey to get World Heritage for the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape, plus also I'll touch on a little bit about the work that we do and some of the property management and our range of programs. So yeah, as mentioned, Budj Bim Cultural Landscape is World Heritage protected now. It was inscribed on the UNESCO list in 2019 in July. Over in Azerbaijan at Baku. Budj Bim Cultural Landscape is one of the world's most oldest aquaculture systems. It has been used and modified by Gunditjmara for over 6,600 years, and using the lava flow and the water channels that have been created and modified to make sure that there's good sustainable food resources and other rich cultural resources across Gunditjmara country for many generations. So it's a pretty unique system, and I also like to always highlight that it's it was engineered a long time before any technology was around by Gunditjmara. So I think it's about that reading the land and understanding country, and that sustainability is always something we've continued to carry forward. It's just an aerial view. This is one part of the aquaculture system. I hope you can see my mouse here, but you'll see here's some sinkholes there. That's an old weir that's in the system, and then there's channels that go through that. So that connects up to Lake Conda, which is sort of in the back there. And Lake Conda was restored in 2010. So through sort of colonisation and then European sort of farming practices and whatnot, they drained a lot of the system, and we've had to work on sort of re-establishing a lot of the wetlands and then cultural flows to support the function of the system. And despite all of the efforts to stop the function of the system, it's always been maintained, and it is always functioned in some capacity. So our World Heritage journey, you'll see, it was a really long process, over 33 years. So first inscription was proposed by Gunditjmara in 1989. In 2002, I mentioned before, we restored Lake Conda, but we did that through the development of the Lake Conda Sustainable Development Plan, which identified World Heritage as an objective. 2002 from 2015, it's just lots of research and lobbying and lots of convincing at times to try and demonstrate all things needed to be able to sort of show the significance and the uniqueness of the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. In 2017, this is a big milestone, we'll put on the tentative list, the Australian World Heritage tentative list, and then, as I mentioned earlier, 2019 we're inscribed on the World Heritage list. Throughout all of this time, lots of things have supported that process or sort of helped us to demonstrate that, but a big one is our continuing connection to country. It's a huge thing for us. We've always been able to maintain it despite a lot of the efforts and barriers that have been put in place for Gunditjmara, and that was also recognised through our native title determination back in 2007. One other thing, we've always been an Indigenous-led, I guess, through the nomination process, it's always been Indigenous-led, and all the other, I guess, land justice work and other sort of cultural heritage work that Gunditjmara do, we always need to maintain that community control. So we always have a mob involved in all the decision-making processes and their involvement in ensuring that we're caring for country as part of our cultural obligation also. So a lot of these things, sort of, if we put all that together, is really what supported us getting the highest, I guess, level of protection for the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape, which is really important for future generations for our mob. Some good feedback through the inscription process. So I mentioned we're in Baku in 2019, and we had some really positive feedback, and sometimes I think you don't give yourself enough time to reflect, but Spain, the delegates there for Spain said that it's a nomination that's got it all. So it was really sort of looked at our management system, the protection management system that was in place, and the customary management system that was in place too. So from a Gunditjmara perspective, so that was all really positive. Hungary sort of mentioned that we've got a perfectly managed site. We wouldn't go that far. There's always room for improvement, but a really good effective management system that we do have in place to sort of look after the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. And I'll run through a few examples to give you a bit of an idea around our management system that we do use and how it works on country. So we've got, I think it's around, please don't quote me, about 4,000 hectares of Indigenous protected areas across the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. So they're managed for natural and cultural values. And Gunditjmara and Gunditjmara, which is another Aboriginal community controlled organisation in Hayward, we manage these properties and we own them. So they are a big part of the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. There's also the Budj Bim National Park, which also makes up the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. So that's sort of that's the northern component, and the national park is quite large, and that's managed through a joint management arrangement. So we've got Budj Bim Council and Parks Victoria that look after that. To look after country and do a lot of the work for that, we've got our Budj Bim Ranger program. We've also got a land management crew. We've also got some World Heritage Rangers. So we've got a really good suite of ranger programs that are going out every single day, looking after country and trying to enhance the values of country despite some of the challenges. So their job is it varies from day to day, and they're really sort of some stuff can be really backbreaking. You're building fences on lava flow country, which is not the easiest country to build a fence on, to educational programs with young kids, teaching them about our culture around our cultural sort of practices and keeping them strong, and our cultural resources and keeping them strong. So they run a little bit of cattle on off the lava flow is what we call it. So it's just a really, really diverse range of program activities that they undertake. Some big things that we're focusing on at the moment is water quality. Water quality is really key to making sure we maintain, it sort of underpins our outstanding universal value, but also just how important water is for country anyway. It's something that we need to do. So we've got a good monitoring program in place, and we look at doing different levels of water testing, fish surveying, looking at vegetation, addressing some of the weed issues that we've got, the woody weed issues throughout some of the waterways, and some other things like revegetation work to try and keep the waterways healthy, because sometimes they do come under a lot of pressure. So we sort of put a lot of effort and focus into that. also got a pretty big or pretty large problem with feral pig down on the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape. The big concern for that is the impact that they could have to our cultural heritage, so our aquaculture system. So some of the stone features out on country, they love to dig and root around, and they love looking for fresh bugs and whatnot in the ground. So anyway, it interferes with some of the rock structures that we have around. So big problem for us. We've got some big control efforts being put into place to try and manage that and mitigate that risk. We've also do a lot of cultural burning out on country. I think you had Victor at some point through this conference. We do a lot of work sometimes with fire sticks, but just around sort of building our capacity around cultural burning, but also the need to establish a really good fire regime within the landscape to mitigate some of them risks around wildfires and stuff like that. So plus also really supports the region for our native species and stuff like that out on country. Cultural heritage, again, is another big one. We've got Cultural Heritage Unit. They look at cultural heritage management, so making sure that any pressures that are on cultural heritage, we're sort of safeguarding that as best as possible. And another big one is we've just launched our tourism. So we're operating now, offering tourism experiences across the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape, and part of that's been the implementation of some new visitor infrastructure. So that's just ensuring safe visitor access, and it looked at opportunities to have raised walkways and just make sure that, the impact of tourism is always going to be as minimal as possible. But it's still enough that we can continue to share that Gunditjmara story and share some of the work that we do with special interest groups and all sorts of people. Partnerships, can't stress how important our partnerships are. We would never have gotten to where we've been, where we've gotten to today, and that future sort of ongoing work around capacity building for our ranger programs, just as an organisation. A perfect example here is we've had a fire truck gifted to us from our local DELP office to support fire management out on the landscape. So it's just the continuation of continuously demonstrating, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and that we're the right people to be doing some of this work. So it's really good. On the left-hand side, that photo, we've partnered with CMA. We're doing some woody work. We've taken away some of the big trees throughout the system that are sort of clogging that up. So really large jobs. This is just a really small snippet of our partnerships and the extent of them, but can't stress how important they are. Managing water flows, I think I touched on this before and how important it is. This photo here on the right, you'll see a European drainage system going through. Here you'll see the Gunditjmara aquaculture system, the one that was traditionally here, the one that's been modified, for the use of kuyang travelling through the system. And other resources, but the European drainage system, as I mentioned, it dried out a lot of the wetlands. The natural wetlands in the system have sort of been altered and manipulated for farming practices, which again is that comes with some other implications. So it's sort of we look at opportunities to restore some of our wetlands, and some of them are really simple, such as sandbagging, building a sandbagging wheel. We've sort of done a few hydrology studies to have a look at what the water flow is in that area, and how can we re-establish some of them and not cause too much impact, say, to our neighbouring farmers and other people in the region. So it truly, again, that also relies on good partnerships with local landholders and CMAs and other water authorities to really be able to undertake that work. Another thing is using technology. So we've got LiDAR here. LiDAR, hopefully you're familiar with it. If not, it's an aerial, sorry, I have so much pressure with 5 minutes coming up. It's an imagery thing. It's a very high resolution one. Basically strips back the vegetation. So if you look at this picture here on the left, to this picture here on the right. Picture on the left, you can't see much. Strip back the vegetation. Through here, where I've got the arrow, you'll see this sort of looks like a bit of a drainage system. Once again, that's a fish channel. A fish channel, the one that was carbon dated back 6,600 plus years ago, that we always thought was around, say it was 50 metres. It's actually 160 metres. So without the use of LiDAR, we were never able to, or we didn't truly understand sometimes the extent and how large they were. So LiDAR has been a great way, or a great use of technology for us to be able to have a look at a desktop, know what we're looking for, to sort of see some of them features out across the landscape, so we can continue to register and make sure that they're protected and we understand the extent of the landscape too is really good. And then we go out and ground truth it. So we can record it and make sure it's going to be protected. So that's kind of there's a snapshot of the Budj Bim Cultural Landscape, and I'm really sorry I was trying to make it up to Sydney and couldn't quite get there. But yeah, I don't know if there's any quick questions or anything that anyone had, or if there's anything in particular you wanted me to touch on, or that's the end of the slideshow.